On today's Locked On Jayhawks, we're going to take deep dives into every player and position for KU basketball. How have they done so far, and what has fueled their games to this point in the season?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. This is Locked On Jayhawks. You can find it anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every show of Locked On Jayhawks. We had our KU West Virginia recap. We'll have a KU UCF preview coming later this week, also right here with LOJ. And on today's episode, we're going to be evaluating the KU position groups and players to this point of the season and evaluating, whether it was preseason expectations to where they are now or how this season has gone. We're going to talk about it and go a little bit deep with some fun stats into each player and kind of get an understanding of where things are right now at this point of the season for these different players. Let's start right here with the guards for KU. And we're going to start with Dajuan Harris. Dajuan Harris so far this season is averaging 10.3 points, 5.8 assists, 1.6 steals per game. He's only averaging 1.6 turnovers per game. The turnover number is much down from where it was a season ago. And the shooting percentage from the floor, 45%, that's good. 85% at the foul line, also good. The three-point percentage hasn't been quite to his career norms at 31%. That's the one number that you're hoping to kind of come up. But you look at it with Dajuan, I think overall he's had a very good season. I know there have been some games that they've lost where, he hasn't had the best shooting games, and you look at the Creighton game, certainly coming to mind there. You look at, I guess in the Missouri game, he was, below 45% on 2-point shots. He was 20% on 3-point shots. The West Virginia game, he, didn't necessarily have his best shooting game overall, going 29% on 2-point shots. But I think a lot of it hasn't necessarily, it's the lack of spacing provided for him by the lineups with KJ Adams and Hunter Dickinson that has made it a little tougher on him. But overall this season, Dajuan Harris right now ranks 94th percentile in assist percentage, 97th percentile in assist to turnover rate. He's 79th percentile in steal rate defensively. We've seen him look, I think he's gotten blown past every so often here or there. He's more of a gambling defender. I don't know that he's been as good as the guy 2 years ago, but I think he's been better than the guy last year defensively. And I think he's overall been a positive defender for you on that end of the court. And when you look at it with him, I think it's very interesting because he's shooting, 63% at the rim so far this season. That was something where he struggled in last year. He's done a lot better with kind of the floater mid-range shots. He's 18 of 41 from within the 3-point line, but outside of 4.5 feet of the rim. So he's done a good job in those areas. If the 3-point shooting can come around for him, I think it would be everything you would hope for from a Dajuan Harris season this year. I think statistically it's all there. So I think if you're comparing to preseason expectations, this would be one where I would view Dajuan Harris as being, as having a passing grade, right? As being somebody who has lived up to expectations and maybe even slightly beyond it to this point of the season. What about Zeke Mayo? Zeke Mayo, so far this season, 14.7 points per game. That number has really skyrocketed lately. 4 rebounds, 3.2 assists. Not getting a lot of defensive numbers, 0.6 steals, 0.2 blocks. He's shooting 47% from the floor, 38 from 3, 89 at the foul line. I think with Zeke Mayo, you're getting, more than you could have envisioned with him coming in, because even when he came in and even when there was the high praise from Bill Self in the offseason, there still was, okay, what exactly is he going to bring to the table? And he has been KU's most consistent offensive player. 27, 25, 26. Those are the 3 scoring efforts of his last 3 games. He has taken over offensively for KU. He's shooting, 2-point shots in the 81st percentile nationally, 3-point shots in the 71st percentile nationally, and that's on high volume. He's got 70th percentile assist to turnover ratio nationally. So he's been just really good for KU overall, and he's shooting really good at the rim. He's shooting good in mid-range. He's shooting good from the corner. He's shooting good from above the break. He has been KU's most dynamic offensive player most consistently. I know he's not leading the team in scoring. That would be Hunter Dickinson, but I think Zeke has just been the most dynamic offensive player that this team has had. So this would be an A for me. in terms of what he has provided this season and compared to preseason expectations. Now, the next guy on the list is Diggy Coit. I don't know that coming into the season we expected him to have a huge role. Kind of expected the Jalen Coleman-Lands role, where maybe he's playing some games, maybe he's playing other games. Some games he might play 5 minutes, others he might play 20 if he's on. We've seen a more consistent role for Diggy Coit. He's played in every game. He's playing 18 minutes per game so far this season. And with Diggy Coit, he's been excellent three-point shooting so far this year. He's shooting 43% on three-point shots. He's averaging over 5 points per game, over 2 rebounds, 1.6 assists. Interestingly enough, he has really struggled, though, on 2-point shots. So he's shooting 43% so far this season on three-point shots. That's in the 88th percentile nationally. He's only in the 13th percentile nationally in 2-point shots. So I do think the adjustment to bigger height and length has bothered him in some of those shots, but he has been a good three-point shooter for this team. He's also done a really good job avoiding turnovers. He's in the 99th percentile in assist to turnover ratio. I mean, when you go across the board with those KU guards, Mayo, Coit, and Dajuan Harris, that's a lot of really good assist to turnover ratio, which is kind of a thing that Kansas has done well to this point in time. And so when you look at it with Diggy Coit, you know, I think the defense has maybe been better than you might have expected. It'll be interesting to see because he was a big part of that lineup along with when they played Flory next to Hunter in the West Virginia game, what that means kind of moving forward. But I think Diggy Coit, this would also be an A compared to preseason expectations of like what you were expecting from him. Like, I think Dajuan Harris has met expectations, maybe slightly above. If you look at some of the production, I think Zeke Mayo has been above expectations. I think David Coit has been above expectations in terms of what you were going to get from Diggy. And then the last guard we have to get to on the list, we're just doing scholarship players, obviously, is Shaquille Moore, which that's been kind of a different thing. He's had to deal with an injury. There's been a lot of rumors about what was going on there, but he's back into playing now. But only 5 games played, only 5.8 minutes per game. 1.8 points per game. He is shooting 60% from the floor, but I don't really want to go into the numbers that much more because it's such a small sample size. This would definitely be one where it is, below where your level of expectation was before the season started. I definitely thought he would be a big part of the rotation. I definitely thought that, he would be somebody because he is a good defender that would really help you out there and that he does have some bounce and athleticism that this team hasn't always shown all the way through, that I thought he would have a good role on this team, whether that was 12 minutes a game, whether it was 18, 20 minutes per game. I didn't expect him to be somebody who's only giving you 5 minutes when he's going out there. And even like just as much as last week, we heard from Bill Self talking about it's more ideal for Dajuan Harris being a 28 to 30 minute per game guy, and that Shaquille Moore is the backup point guard. And so that inherently would mean, okay, he's playing 10 to 12 minutes, but that just hasn't been the case at all. So I don't know what is going on there. I don't know if it's more of a Bill Self thing. I don't know if it's more of an injury thing. I don't know if it's a Shaquille Moore thing, but that was somebody who I think you were in the preseason kind of counting on being in the rotation and being a very real ball handler, kind of player with a lot of juice off the bench that could give you some extra push and some extra defense that hasn't really happened for whatever of those reasons it entirely is. But overall, you look at this guard position. If you were to say the guard position for KU, with Dajuan Harris, David Coit, Zeke Mayo, and Shaquille Moore, I think this has probably been the best position for KU on the team. I don't know. I guess it's hard. Hunter Dickinson has the most production on the team statistically. Flory Bidunga has been awesome for KU. So maybe you would say the center position has been the best. This has certainly been a better position than the wing position. If you're comparing what you thought you were going to be getting from this position to the preseason expectations, I think again, it's been less what you got from Shaquille Moore, but if you've gotten more from David Coit and more from Zeke Mayo and about on par from Dajuan Harris, I don't know that you can necessarily say that this position group has been at fault or has been one that hasn't necessarily lived up to the billing so far this season. Let's get to those wings coming up next, because I think that'll be an interesting conversation. What is going on there? Our episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for what players are going to score a touchdown, how many points each team will score. You can bet alternate spreads. You think a team's going to blow somebody out, bet the alt spread, get some plus value there, and there's so much more going on. Just visit FanDuel.com. You can join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. Don't forget to check out Locked On College Football, Locked On College Basketball for your second listen as well. All right, let's move on to the wing position for KU. So with Ryland Griffin so far this season, he's averaging 19.4 minutes per game. He has missed one game due to, I think it was illness in the Creighton game, right? 6.5 points per game, 2.5 rebounds per game, 1.2 assists. He is shooting 43% from the floor. He is shooting 33% from three, 78% from the foul line. Obviously, just the raw numbers are light from where you would have expected him in the regular season, both in terms of the counting numbers and in terms of the, like you would have probably expected the three-point shooting to be higher than 33%. Now, how much of it is, okay, if teams are just not respecting, you're playing this too big lineup and they're condensing the paint and they're saying basically, okay, we're going to let other people shoot, but we're going to try to take away Ryland Griffin, and then he's maybe forcing shots and he's not getting in there as much as he might have hoped. That's entirely possible to kind of playing into it so far. But what's interesting here with Ryland Griffin, he's in the 90th percentile in 2-point percentage so far this season. And he still is above average nationally in 3-point percentage. So you're still getting good stuff there. Now, he doesn't take a lot of twos necessarily, but he's hit them when he needs to kind of counter there. And you look at it, and I think what's very interesting is the lineup that has had Dajuan Harris, Zeke Mayo, Ryland Griffin, KJ Adams, Hunter Dickinson has had a really good net rating this year. It's a plus 41 net rating, basically, which that's in the 86th percentile of all five-man lineups nationally. That's been a really good lineup, but we've only seen it for 77 minutes this year for Kansas through 12 games. So you're really only seeing the Dajuan, Zeke, Griffin, KJ, Hunter, which in my mind, if you are going to play KJ next to Hunter for extensive minutes, I think the best guy you can throw out there with them is Ryland Griffin. He's the best shooter, right? Whereas AJ Storr is more of a slasher. Now, maybe if you want to do the Dajuan, Zeke, and Diggy Coit, that can make some sense. But I think that just, I don't know. And also the Dajuan, Zeke, Griffin, Storr lineup with Dickinson or Flory at the 5. We haven't seen that enough either. And I think that would help him also. But this is, again, one of those situations where it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. Like, has there been enough leash? Has there been enough leeway? Has there been enough playing time given to Ryland Griffin? You could argue maybe there should be more. You could also argue that, okay, he's playing 19.4 minutes per game. It's not like he's not getting any playing time, and he just hasn't lived up to the billing. But is he getting as much, leeway to make mistakes as maybe he should be? And if you're playing the long game where you're trying to be the best team possible in March, did you already mess that up by not giving a longer leash in the early portion of the season in November and December? It feels like we're having that conversation every year under Bill Self. And Bill Self, I still think the world of. He's an unbelievable college basketball coach, but I think that has been kind of a fair criticism here in the portal era for how things have gone there. But obviously this has been one where it's been below expectation with what you've gotten from Ryland Griffin. And again, it's kind of eye of the beholder who you want to blame for why that is happening. AJ Storr, I think, would fall in the same bucket here as with Ryland Griffin. The counting stats, not nearly there. 20.3 minutes per game, 7.3 points, 1.9 rebounds. He's only shooting 39.8% from the floor, 33% from three, and 73% at the foul line so far this season. And again, this is one where it's like a little bit of, okay, well, Bill Self still is giving him 20 minutes per game, and that comes with him having just a 45.8 effective field goal percentage. That's 38th percentile nationally. Over the last 5 games, he has a 30.3 effective field goal percentage. That is in the 5th percentile nationally. That's not good. He's not getting rebounds, which he's never really been known for that necessarily. He's only in the 35th percentile in 2-point shooting. He isn't really getting to the free throw line. He's only in the 32nd percentile in true shooting percentage, only in the 4th percentile over the last 5 games. He is in the 0th percentile over the last 5 games in terms of assist to turnover rate and assist rate. So I say all this to be like, okay, yes, again, could there be a little bit more leeway? Probably, but it's also got to be hard if you're the head coach and you're seeing all those bad things happen. And with AJ Storr, maybe he's not as good of a defender as you would have hoped necessarily, to where you can understand why maybe Bill Self is playing him 20 minutes per game as opposed to playing 30 minutes per game. I do think if I was picking between, to me, who makes sense to give the longer leash to. If you could only pick one between Ryland Griffin and AJ Storr, I would pick Griffin because I think the 3-point gravity and the volume, I know they're both shooting around the same part right now, but I do think the ceiling of what potentially Ryland Griffin can be and what he brings to your offense spacing wise is a little bit better of a fit with how you want to do this. Now, if we're talking an ideal world, maybe that would be KJ Adams becomes your super sixth man, becomes your Kevin Young type players coming off the bench. And then you're starting Storr and Griffin, or you're starting, a third guard and one of Storr Griffin, and that's cool too. I just am not expecting it to happen. Like, we can have a conversation about what you think should happen or what you like best. Bill Self's going to continue rolling KJ Adams starting at the 4. I feel good about that. I feel like that's going to happen. Not necessarily saying it's the right thing. I'm just saying I feel like that's going to happen. And so if that's what you're going to do, I think Ryland Griffin makes a little bit more sense. But I think in both these cases, Storr and Griffin, it's been below what you've expected. I think maybe even more so with Storr because I think the expectation was even more to be like one of the 2 best players on the team. And that certainly hasn't happened. And then Marquise Passmore would be the last one here. A little bit shorter on this one. 11 games played, 5.9 minutes per game. Not a ton to talk about in the stats. When he's been in, he hasn't, had like a big impact necessarily, but he's not playing a ton of minutes. We'll see what Marquise Passmore looks like possibly next year, right? Can he be somebody who takes a big leap and is ready to go next season? I certainly thought we were going to see enough flashes from Marquise Passmore this year that you were going to be pumped to see him possibly as like a starter next year. I don't think we've seen that, which has been unfortunate. And I think overall, if we're evaluating the wing position for KU, I think you probably are 0 for 3 on players hitting their preseason expectation or being above your preseason expectation. Maybe this was your expectation for Marquise Passmore that, it was just going to be kind of a spot minute type freshman season and there's not much he can show. And I can lend an ear to that, but certainly this has been KU's worst position so far this season, and one where I think everybody has been below expectation to this point in time. Now, if you wanted to add KJ Adams to this group as a wing, technically, even though I view him more as a big man, but he does play the 4, then I think you'd be 0 for 4 on players maybe surpassing their preseason expectations. But we'll get into KJ with the rest of the bigs next. This is Locked on Jayhawks. And our episode of LOJ is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events. It can be sports, music, theater, or comedy. And it's just the energy, it's the excitement, it's all unforgettable, especially if you get that good environment, which you do at Allen Fieldhouse, you do at a great concert, you do at a great comedy event, right? And now Game Time's made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks, I found amazing deals and can even see the view from my seat before buying, so you know what you're getting into. The super deal is particularly impressive. They offer great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front. No surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, continuing on here with LOJ. What about the evaluating the big position? So with Hunter Dickinson, 15.1 points per game, 10.4 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 1.4 steals, 1.4 blocks. That is incredible efficiency. Obviously, the points isn't quite there to what it was last year. He's also playing less minutes per game, and I think more teams have condensed the court against KU consistently. 54% from the floor, 69% at the foul line, 30% at the three-point line for Hunter Dickinson. So I think statistically, he is still having a very productive season. I also think statistically, it's not quite what it was last year, so maybe it's a little bit below expectation from that standpoint. When you look into where he ranks, he's in the 80th percentile in offensive rebound percentage nationally right now. He always ranks well in defensive rebounding rate nationally. He's done a good job avoiding turnovers for a big man, and he's also been a great passer this year. 93rd percentile in assist rate so far this season, and he's in the 86th percentile to assist to turnover rate. He's also in the 91st percentile steal rate, 83rd percentile block rate. So even though there are certain deficiencies in his defensive game and certain things that he doesn't do well, and certain times where you question the lack of mobility or the lack of hustle at times, he is at least an active and aware and lengthy defender that can still make some plays happen for you. And I do think when you give him a player like Flory Bidunga, who, Hunter's not the guy who's going to, somebody got beat on the backside, Hunter's going to come over and block a shot as a help defender to cover up for someone. That's not really his game, but Flory can do that. And so I think the beauty of the Flory and Hunter lineup from the West Virginia game was that you had that good pairing, and I think it helped Hunter on the defensive end as well, that I would like to see that lineup even more moving forward. But nonetheless, I think the big thing here with Hunter, he's only in the 59th percentile in 2-point percentage. It feels like he has missed more gimmies, more shots that he normally makes this year than in previous years. Maybe that's just, I know he had that injury at one point earlier in the season. Maybe it has something to do with the condensed court a little bit more. He's in the 57th percentile for true shooting percentage. So as much as that's slightly above average, as much as you're asking him to do on offense, you would like to see those numbers go up to where they were kind of the season before. I also think you have the questions about the defense, but like I said, that is a little bit matchup dependent. He just got kind of carved up a little bit against West Virginia. But again, when you have the lineup with Flory, I think he was better on that end. But you can't deny the production from Hunter Dickinson, as much as you might have questions of some of those things that, like, I don't think I'm not going to say this is necessarily below expectations for a failing grade or something like that from where the preseason expectations. I don't think it was above expectations. So I think it's just kind of, Hunter is the same guy that he was last year, for better or for worse. There are different circumstances around him. And I think, I guess I said that we'll work into KJ Adams here. I said this on the West Virginia recap episode. I think both Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams are, good players in different respects, and that you can have on winning teams, very high level winning teams, and make it work by building personnel around that. But it's very hard when they're both on the same roster, right? And so that's why I think you could evaluate each of these players individually as we get to KJ Adams here and say that they've lived up to expectations, from the preseason expectations. They've been at their expectation level, but the position overall of the big man position has been maybe less than what you would expect at the same point in time. Has it been KU's best position? I don't know. Let's get into that here. Okay, with KJ Adams, you're talking about 29 minutes per game, which yes, that is third on KU in minutes per game. 8.8 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 0.6 steals, 1 block. He's shooting 55% from the floor, 78% on free throws. Credit to him there. He's had a really good free throw shooting season so far. He is in the 96th percentile in assist to turnover rate. So again, you're talking about another KU player who ranks really well there. You were talking about 66th percentile in block rate. So he's actually done pretty good with that. He's in the 79th percentile for free throw percentage. But here's where the problem comes in. If KJ Adams, so you already know that teams are going to sag off of him, and they're going to, basically condense the paint, and it's going to make things more difficult for you on offense. And so if KJ is not hitting his floater or his elbow shot, that makes it even harder. It gets even harder when KJ is not hitting his twos. Right now, he's in the 49th percentile for 2-point percentage. And over the last 5 games, KJ is in the 15th percentile nationally in 2-point percentage. So teams also don't even have to respect it from a post-up perspective. They don't really have to respect it from this guy's going to drive on us and finish over us perspective right now. And that is an increasingly problematic venture, to where you could say the same thing. If Flory's playing next to Hunter, you could say that as well. Well, they don't have to worry about Flory shooting the jumper. They can just sag in the paint as well. But Flory's going to be better at crashing the offense glass. Flory is going to be able to finish over a 4-man who is probably smaller than him. Whereas right now, KJ hasn't been finishing as well. I do think KJ has had his best season defensively at the same point in time. And I go back to that Duke game. Like, you don't win that game without KJ Adams. He was great against Cooper Flagg. And so it's hard to remove some of the moments like that. And it is a little bit dependent on the matchup for just how problematic it is. Again, I said earlier, maybe KJ would be better in a Kevin Young role. Maybe it'd be better if he was playing 20, 22 minutes per game, right? Maybe he starts the game or he comes off the bench. I guess it doesn't matter. The minutes probably matter more than who actually starts the game, and who finishes the game is going to matter even more to that respect as well. So it's hard for me, because I think with KJ, you look at the stats, they're probably lower than they were last year. I think the defense, like I said, has been better, but it just feels like with teams repeatedly doing some of the same stuff defensively with clogging up the paint, it makes it feel like it's been below expectations to this point. Then you have Flory Bidunga, who 12.6 minutes per game, 6.3 points, 5.4 rebounds. Per 40 numbers are off the charts. This dude's shooting 83% from the floor so far this season. If he was even playing 25 minutes per game, if you just extrapolated it out, which I know that's not how it works because you can't maintain that energy level when you're playing more minutes, but 25 minutes per game on pace would be over 12 points, over 10 rebounds, almost 11, and 1.5 blocks per game. He's been phenomenal. I think, honestly, like, I don't know. I think there were high expectations for him, obviously, but you didn't know the cap, the limit that he'd be playing with Hunter on the team. And the fact that he's in the 99th percentile in effective field goal percentage, in the 90th percentile for offensive rebound rate, which, by the way, I don't think I went over that one with KJ Adams, which for KJ, his offensive rebound rate is 46th percentile. So there's that advantage that I was kind of talking about there. He's in the 99th percentile is Flory in 2-point percentage, and he's in the 91st percentile in block percentage. I think he's been above expectations, and he's been as high of expectations even as there were with what he was coming into as a McDonald's All-American and the number one center and all this stuff. I think he's lived above it so far to this point. And then the last one would be Zach Clements, which 8 games played, 5.3 minutes per game. So not a ton from the stats department either. But honestly, like, where we were at the start of the season, he's had a couple games where he's come in for a few minutes, and I thought, like, been decent, been solid for you. I would say slightly above expectation, but it is such a small role that it doesn't have as big of an impact. So overall, I think the big position, maybe you would say slightly less than expectations coming into the year, because the stats are down on Hunter a little bit from a scoring perspective. KJ's stats are down, even though the defense is better. Even though Flory and Zach have been a bit better than you expect, they're playing way less minutes than those other guys. So it is interesting, though, because if you are saying who's the best players on this team, I do feel like the bigs comes in. Here's an interesting question, and we'll leave you with this one before we wrap things up on the show. If you were having a draft right now of players on this KU, the best players on this KU team, right? I'm not talking long term. I'm just talking this year. Even though Flory is only playing 12 minutes per game, where does Flory go in that draft? Could you make an argument Zeke Mayo is 1 and Flory Bidunga is 2? I don't know if that would be the answer, and I haven't really thought this through. I'm just bringing up this question right now, but I do find that very interesting, to say the least. All right, that'll wrap up this episode of the show. We'll have a KU UCF preview for tomorrow's episode. See you then on LOJ.